How did a man, completely defined by his own personal crisis, build a system that didn't just pull a nation back from the brink, but actually changed the rulebook on how to lead when everything is falling apart? Think about that for a second. That right there, that's the key. This isn't about boring policy papers or complicated economic theories. No, it's about psychology. It's about confidence. It's about this deep, almost radical belief that a leader's main job, their real job, is to be an emotional anchor for everyone else. So to really get what he did, you gotta go back to where it all started, right into the eye of the storm. Picture it. It's 1933, and the American banking system, it is in a total, absolute freefall. Seriously, put yourself in his shoes for a minute. You just became president, and on day one, someone tells you, hey, you need to convince millions of terrified people to take every penny they have and put it back into the banks that are literally collapsing around them. And if you don't, the entire US economy, gone. I mean, can you imagine? That's the insane pressure cooker he walked into. And here's the kicker. He didn't have months or even weeks to come up with a plan. He had 24 hours, a single day. He didn't have some perfect genius plan from his team of economists. Nope. He had something else, something way more powerful that he'd been building for years in private. He had this documented mask of pure, unshakable optimism. So while all these so-called experts are screaming at each other about, gold standards and tariffs, all this complex stuff, Roosevelt does something completely different. It's radical. He decides to basically weaponize calm. He uses this brand new technology, the radio, to just talk, to invite himself into every living room in America. And that's how we get the fireside chat. It wasn't just a speech, it was a system designed to make his calm contagious. And this is where you see his genius, right? He got it. He understood that when people are panicking, real authority, it doesn't come from a law book or a fancy title. It comes from being the one person who projects total confidence, the anchor. And think about the power of that, especially coming from a man whose legs were literally locked in steel braces. This is where his whole framework was born. But to really get how he got there, we gotta rewind a bit. We need to see who he was before all this. Okay, so before he was FDR, the architect of the New Deal, he was someone completely different. He was a guy who, by all accounts, was set up for a life totally disconnected from the struggles of regular people. I mean, we're talking about a level of privilege that's hard to even imagine. His whole childhood was just easy. Private tutors, huge fancy houses, a last name that basically unlocked any door he wanted to walk through. He was the definition of an insider, born for a life of comfort. And because of all that, nobody in Washington really took him seriously. You know the type. They thought, oh, he's a pleasant young man, he's charming. But deep down, they saw him as a total lightweight. They figured he didn't have the iron, the toughness to lead through a real crisis. Boy, were they about to be proven wrong. Because when he was 39 years old, his life was just ripped in two. That whole story of endless ease got completely destroyed by what one source calls a biological ambush. He got polio, and it left him paralyzed from the waist down. And this wasn't just about his body. It created a totally new reality for him, one that was all about physical endurance, about dealing with institutional silence, and building this unbreakable fortress inside himself. All right, so this next phase of his life, this is everything. He basically vanishes from public view for years, but he's not on vacation. He is in the forge. He's building the character that's going to end up saving the nation. For 7 years, he goes through this intense cycle of struggle, both physical and psychological. He's down in Warm Springs, Georgia, literally fighting to learn how to move again. But this was so much more than physical therapy. He was building what's been called emotional sovereignty. He had to unlearn being an aristocrat. He had to shed that distance and replace it with real empathy that could only come from suffering alongside other people. Just try to imagine the sheer willpower that took. Just to stand in public, he'd have to grip a podium so hard his knuckles would turn white. The pain, the effort, it was immense. But on the outside, he projected this image of effortless calm. He never, ever let the world see him flinch. And this is the light bulb moment. He realized that his private struggle and his public duty were the same thing. He figured, okay, my paralysis is a physical reality, but my composure, my radiant composure, that can be my strategy. He knew that if he wanted to rebuild a whole nation, he first had to prove he could stand in his own pain. And out of that fire, a whole new mindset was born. So this personal journey completely changed how he thought. But it wasn't just a vague feeling. It became a practical philosophy, a real system for how to get things done, how to lead. What's so incredible here is that this philosophy was a direct attack on the political culture of the time. I mean, Washington was frozen, paralyzed by the fear of doing something wrong. Roosevelt's idea was the complete opposite. He basically said, waiting for the perfect plan is the failure. His mantra was simple: try something. If it fails, admit it, try something else. But for goodness sake, do something. And that flows right into this idea of projected action. For FDR, the simple act of doing was a strategic tool. It built momentum. It built confidence. He knew that when people are scared, just seeing movement, seeing action is reassuring. So he treated the Oval Office like a lab, a place for high-stakes experiments, not some dusty museum. And what was the goal of all this experimentation? It wasn't just about fixing the economy. It was bigger. It was about social stabilization. He had this core belief that any plan was only as good as the confidence it gave back to the people. His whole mission was to take the panic of the world and bend it, force it to align with his own internal calm. Okay, so this philosophy wasn't just an idea. He turned it into tangible systems, 4 key pillars. You had the Fireside Architecture, that's his direct communication. The brain trust audit, getting a bunch of smart people to argue and poke holes in every idea. Competitive administration, giving people overlapping jobs to create a sense of competition and urgency. And then there was the direct model, which was his way of getting the real story. Let's zoom in on that one. FDR just flat out refused to believe the boring official reports that came to his desk. Why would he? Instead, he sent out his own people, his wife, Eleanor being the most famous one, right into the thick of it, into the coal mines, the factories, the bread lines. See, other leaders were looking at spreadsheets. FDR was hunting for stories, for the unvarnished truth. And by doing this over and over, he made sure every single policy was built on a foundation of real empathy. So, what happened? What was the result of all this? This framework, born from his own paralysis and built on constant experimentation, what did it actually do? Well, it didn't just work. It completely transformed the country and the presidency itself. I mean, just look at this transformation. The guy they called an aristocratic lightweight, he ends up building the modern American middle class. The man who could barely stand up becomes the voice of national strength. And that pleasant young man, he becomes the leader of the free world. It's an incredible story. And if you need proof, well, here it is, 4 terms. He wasn't just elected. He was elected and elected again and again and again. 4 times. That number isn't just about winning. It's about a level of trust between a leader and a nation that, honestly, we've rarely seen since. But maybe his biggest legacy, the most important one, is this. He has shattered the myth that you have to be physically perfect to be a great leader. He proved that real strength isn't in your body, it's in your resolve. It's internal. He showed the world that your calm composure can be the most powerful weapon you have. So let's bring this home. What does all this mean for you and me? Because this isn't just some old history lesson. It's a playbook. It's a guide for getting through our own storms. His story is basically a roadmap for anyone who's ever felt paralyzed by a crisis. You know, whether it's at work, in your business, in your life. What it teaches us is that our real power isn't in having the perfect answer. It's in our ability to stop overthinking everything and just start trying things. So I want you to ask yourself this, honestly. Where are you overanalyzing things to be safe? Where are you waiting for that perfect plan to appear? What part of your life or your work has been frozen by the fear of failure when what it really needs is just action, some forward motion? So here's the takeaway. Find your own fireside chat. Now, this doesn't mean you need to get a microphone. It could be that tough conversation you've been avoiding. It could be finally starting that bold project at work. Just find one place where you can commit to a calm, decisive action, so much so that nobody can even question your resolve. Because when you do that, you stop being a victim of the storm, you become the calm. Because that, right there, is the heart of the FDR Framework. It's a powerful reminder that anybody can talk a big game. But the truth is always in the action. And your composure, that calm you show when things get chaotic, that is the code for your greatness.